Welcome to BookTube. Look, you make one video on books and all of a sudden people want to throw a label at you. Jeez. Look, I read a book, Inspired by Media Death Cult. If you haven't seen his channel, read along for the month. Includes The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick. And I read it and I have some thoughts on it. In fact, 4 main thoughts on The Man in the High Castle. So, if you've read the book, or if you haven't read the book, seen the TV series, or you haven't seen either, this might spur you on to reasons why you might want to read it, because it's a short book, but it's an interesting book. So let's stick around. Let's jump straight to it. Okay, number 1, or the first one, is, well, is The Man in the High Castle even a sci-fi book? And for most of the part when you're reading it, you'll probably think not really. The plot of the film is that it's set in an alternative history, or alternate history, where the Axis has won the war. The Germans have won in Europe, the Japanese have won on the West, and this kind of comes to a head in the good old USA, where the Reich control the East Coast, the Japanese control the West, and there's a bit of a neutral zone down the middle. So is that it as far as sci-fi? Is it just that premise that goes? And for a lot of it, you'd probably say yes, that there is. There is some mysticism here, certainly, but I don't think that necessarily qualifies it in the sci-fi. And the mysticism really comes in the form of the Japanese side, which based a lot of their ideological thinking and predictions on a prediction, or what seems to be pretty much a magic 8-ball of the I Ching, which reads them verses and gives them premonitions of what's to come. So where's the sci-fi? Well, I can assure you, it comes. The Man in the High Castle is like a veritable treasure trove of ideas. They come all at once, they're smacked up the face, and for some, it'll leave cold, some it will excite, and I fall definitely into that second category, because the possibilities that were endless of this, which is not much more than a novella, and push forward into way into the future. So for a book that was written in 1962, a lot of the famous movie franchises that appeared in the 90s, etc., borrow very clearly from the ideas that stem at the end of this book. And I encourage you to see whether you've seen the same parallels as I did between what happens at the end of the book and some of those franchises, which will become instantly apparent. So yes, it is sci-fi. Yes, it has some really big ideas like a lot of good sci-fi does. And yes, if you wait around and stick around to the end, then you might think it's sci-fi too. Second one is an examination of what culture is. The culture is the thing that many of us talk about. They talk about a sense of an identity, a sense of belonging to something. And really, The Man in the High Castle delves into this in quite some depth. So we're looking at, well, the Japanese culture, the culture of the Reich, and the culture of the Americans. And a lot of exploration goes into this. I've talked previously about the I Ching, mysticism, and the Oracle. And we've talked about the reason, or the ideology of the Nazis and the Reich, and what they talked about as being the benefits of their civilization, of the rise of the Third Reich. And it even gives some question, or some rise to the questions, for each of the characters to think about, well, what is my culture? What do they think of culture? I'll give you an example, a very simple example that's from very early on in the book. The Japanese are fascinated by Americana culture. So things from the history of America. So things like they put a lot of stock in the original Civil War items, such as guns and memorabilia. And they're only interested in originals. And it garners the question of whether culture is something that should be consumed in that way. Is it something that should be talked about in that way? And as somebody who grows up in a capitalist society, and especially for somebody who collects physical media, it prompts and asks questions about whether the things that you buy or that you feel that you need to buy, that idea ends up possessing you, which is an interesting thought and one that's explored right throughout the book from start to finish. Third thing to talk about is the general structure of the novel. You know, most novels have characters, those characters develop along with things that happen to them, and this generates a moving forward of the plot and pacing of the novel that goes along with it. As exciting things happen, you know, the character development and character decisions play heavily into the progress of the novel. The Man in the High Castle is only 15 chapters long, and it eschews a lot of this narrative drive in favour of introspection and of characters examining what they think of certain actions and inactions of the people and factions around them. It's 15 chapters of inner monologue and outward inaction. There's always the promise of a bigger story. Even the name, The Man in the High Castle, talks about something that's a lofty goal. It's something to aim towards. And the question for the reader is, does that result in a destination? Does that result in a strong enough narrative? And for me, I'm very much of the opinion that the journey is always more interesting than the destination anyway. And The Man in the High Castle has an extremely interesting journey to my eyes. Which leads me to the fourth one, and that is the idea of self-doubt. Every character that goes along has this journey of starting out very confident in their ideals or what they're set out to do. And as the chapters progress and the story progresses, self-doubt or questioning seeps into each and every single one of them. Even the most forthright person who will nail his colours to the mast about who he is and what he stands for at the start is left to question whether their actions are paying dividends or whether their actions still hold true throughout the course of the book. And this is one of the most interesting parts of it, because as those motivations and those self-interests play out in relation to putting themselves in front of different people or people that they're not used to surrounding themselves with, does the confidence in oneself still hold up, or are we tested about the decisions that we have to make and are forced to make? This isn't much of a review, but if I was to do a bit of a review for those that are sticking around and wondering if this is a book that should read, one, its real world alternate history setting makes it really accessible. It makes it something that a lot of people will be able to see into. If you've taken any sort of history class at all, you will know the period and the time and some of the motivations of the people who are involved in that place and time. Philip K. Dick's prose are really very readable, but like any good book, it's the themes that are underneath that are what you're left to stop and think about come the end of the film. Are they something that you turn over in your mind and reflect on? Well, The Man in the High Castle made me really reflect on a lot of different things. For something that was lacking supposedly in narrative, it has a lot of ideas. It has a lot of themes in it that are very prevalent today as opposed to what happened previously. But it's not for everyone. There's not much of a driving plot, I would say. It might leave people feeling a bit shortchanged of their time. It might make people think that there's not enough happening on the paper and on the screen. The TV series realised this. It knew it needed some other characters in it. It needed some alternate push to it. In fact, I would say there's only one chapter or one piece in this entire book that has real drive and purpose, that has impetus behind it, where there's something really exciting happening. And that may not be enough for some people. But if you want something that counters and talks about the way that we live, even in current times, that looks at how we consume things, that looks at how we appreciate the people and places and things that are around us and the things that are important to us, then The Man in the High Castle is definitely a book for that. And, well, that was enough for me. If you like this, please let me know in the comments. Give it a like. Let me know what you thought of the book yourself if you've read it. And if so, I'll catch you next time. Take care. All the best. Bye.